Joburg Mayor Herman Mashaba has been pushing the Areyeng Campaign to clean the streets of Johannesburg. It, however, appears parts of the city remain a mess. For 3 weeks, garbage has been piling up at the corner of Twist and Claim in Hillbrow. Nickolaus Bauer has been out there to investigate. Now, Nickolaus, Hillbrow is one of your favorite places in the world. You even live there. So I imagine that if anything goes wrong, you'd be one of the first people to know.
Yeah, indeed. It's not very often you get to do a story so close to home. But the fact of the matter is that refuse collection in the inner city, especially parts of the inner city like Hillbrow, Areyeng and Joburg, has been intermittent to non-existent for the greater part of 2018. Upon investigation, it seems as though there's a multifaceted story here. As you quite rightly pointed out, Herman Mashaba, the mayor, launched the Areyeng Campaign, which is essentially calling on residents to try and ensure that the city remains clean, and people take it upon themselves to ensure that they're not the cause of the litter that is strewn across the City of Gold's streets. However, the case in Hillbrow specifically, not so much for Areyeng and Joburg, it's just that volumes are so much that even when rubbish is collected at points where there's dustbins and skips and that type of thing, it's a case of when it's not collected, it just piles up extremely quickly. I mean, we're talking about 74,000 people living in an area that's just bigger than a square kilometre, so massively overcrowded. And when things like basic refuse collection is not being done sufficiently correctly and on time, it is a problem that flares up very, very quickly.
Well, it's an incredible health hazard. What are residents there saying about it?
Well, also, I mean, there's different thoughts from the residents. We speak to various health professionals. I spoke to a doctor and a dentist on site there on Van der Merwe Street, and essentially they're saying that it's a case of an already bad situation being exacerbated further. You know, if a place is as overcrowded as Hillbrow is, there is an existing risk for disease. And when you have just massive piles of rubbish just being strewn all across the street, your risk of dysentery, your risk of hemorrhagic fever and other diseases that are associated with vermin like rats and cockroaches and other pests just increases. But we managed to speak to also members of the African Diaspora Forum. They're of the opinion that perhaps the city authorities are not taking that problem as seriously because the overwhelming majority of residents in places like Hillbrow are poor people and, of course, foreigners who can't vote when it comes to things like local elections. But also there is a thought from the community itself that they also need to take responsibility themselves to ensure that the place does not continue to become something akin to a pigsty. Maybe let's hear from those two people now.
All right.
Priority is to try and address the question of undocumented migrants, a work in our view that is being done by the Home Affairs Department, instead of him focusing on cleaning the streets.
It's been terrible over the last couple of months now and been getting worse. We don't see many pickup litter people coming on to do their jobs, and with the risk of rodents and cockroaches, it's really a major health risk to the community of Hillbrow. So we'd like something to be done by the authorities urgently, because it seems to be getting worse. Driving in and driving out of Hillbrow is a nightmare on a daily basis, actually.
I'll tell you what, Nickolaus, the number of things that need the mayor's attention now continue to pile up by the day. Yesterday it was residents of Protea Glen who want him to come to that area to address their issues on land. I imagine this is another one of the issues that will now end up at his door.
Well, indeed. I mean, we contacted the mayor's office and his office referred us to Pick It Up. And Pick It Up, they've used the excuse that, you know, in the process of replacing the Josie at Work program, which Josie at Work was essentially a program of offering employment opportunities, menial basic labor opportunities to residents in the city. In the process of phasing that out and insourcing all of those workers, or at least some that were involved in the Josie at Work programs, for permanent positions like litter pickers and part of waste management services like Pick It Up, has taken longer than expected. Pick It Up have now promised to ensure that either a new contract is signed temporarily with contractors to get them on site and ensure that the streets of Hillbrow are kept a lot cleaner than they are at the moment. But there's also been a promise to try and solve this impasse as soon as possible, because it's a question of the city saying that they're trying to do the right thing, but the lived experience on the ground is, to my mind at least, not what politicians in the run-up to the 2016 local government election were promised.
But very briefly, Nickolaus, is there a willingness from the community there to also get involved, and I mean more broadly, instead of just the lone voices amongst the crowd?
Look, I have to be honest with you, that's a major challenge in Hillbrow. It's also got to do with the fact that there's a very transient community. Not a lot of people call Hillbrow home, but they live there, if you understand what I'm saying. You know, there's a lot of building overcrowding, there's a lot of people living in very, very challenging conditions. And as you can imagine, when people live in conditions that leave a lot to be desired, there's not necessarily a respect for the place that you're living in. So I'll definitely say that even as a Hillbrow resident, it does have, the suburb faces a massive challenge with its residents actually living up to that responsibility of keeping your own area clean.